Live,
Are we live?
and we are live. So welcome to
I needed to say I'm
Saturday.
live, not you.
No, it's my turn.
No,
Uh,
it's my turn.
no, it's my turn.
We're co-hosting, and you said that last week, so it should be my turn today, right?
You know what, Aamir? I had a great yesterday, so you go right ahead.
No, you go ahead then.
No, you go ahead.
No,
Mandy,
no,
you have
it's your
now
turn.
been minted. Just kidding.
I was going to say, stop it, you two, or we're just going to start. Nick and I are taking over.
This
Hello,
reminds me
everyone.
of when Nick would go. He would say he would. We started this kind of like compliment battle back and forth where Nick would say something nice and I go, "Oh, no, you're not going to one up me, buddy. No, you're way more beautiful than I am." And so it turned into this compliment battle where at the end, it didn't matter. You just left going, walking on sunshine. Whoa.
Hey,
But
hey, Danny. We've got Danny on there. Good to meet you.
oh,
So
so
we've got good topics for everyone today. We have one guest, but I don't think they will be joining. They might pop in later, but let's see. Let's begin then, Josh.
okay, well, welcome to SaaSy Saturday Live, and where today we have, of course, Josh and Amir as the co-hosts. We've got Mandy with us, and we've got Nick, who are pretty regular guests with us, and we'd love to have them over. Today's conversation will involve leadership coaching, among other things, processes within startups and corporate, and man, whatever else Amir throws at us, because he is the all wise one, honestly.
I mean, you look wiser though.
No, it's because of my background.
Is it?
Yeah, I have everything blurred out because my autistic.
Because it's dark and scary.
Well, no. That's my heart. No, it's mainly because my autistic kiddo right now is not having it with clothes. So rather than somebody get upset and call CPS on us because we have a naked child running around, I just blur out the background. Yeah.
And by the way, that was a great post today. I really appreciated that restaurant. The local pizzeria. So the manager needs to be applauded, and do tell him that from anyone of us that it's a good thing that you're doing for someone's kid.
Well, so
That was
he,
an excellent example of leadership, actually.
yeah.
So not only from the store, but what you did too, I think was an excellent example of leadership, right? Like recognition,
Julie.
appreciation,
Yeah.
really, really important.
Well,
important in leadership.
So here's kind of Archer. He is so like I could count on both hands and wouldn't eat all my fingers what he's willing to eat. Other than that, like I swear to God, he would starve before he tried anything else. And he's also very, very visually. His gag reflexes come up to something he doesn't find appealing. For example, if we were to cook eggs, he would have immediate projectile vomiting. Like it's I don't know why, but if we cook eggs in here, he wants it. He's like blah, like you're just like wait what? There like no warning whatsoever, right? So Mandy's like oh, okay, and so. But one of the things that he absolutely looks forward to every single Friday, and he talks about all week long in his albeit limited vocabulary, is Papa John's, Papa John's, Papa John's. So for him, he'll say Papa John's pizza Pepsi. That's and he looks forward to it. So we kind of use it as a kind of like a carrot and stick kind of thing. Okay, don't it's weird that we have to say like, okay, don't run from the school this week. Don't but so one of the things, and we've been going to this place for a while, and if the cheese is cooked a little bit too long so it's brown, he won't eat it. If there's any red sauce showing, he won't eat it. Like it has to be like the exact way he likes it. And they go out of their way to make sure it's 100% correct. And if it's not correct, they start all over. And so I called because Archer runs in there laughing and smiling, and just, it's like I said, it's the highlight of his week. And so I called, and I've been to places before now. I don't see it as much as my wife does, which I think there are people that do treat women differently than men. And when women, especially like my wife is with my son and he's being himself, like they'll say something to her like, oh, well, if you just spanked him, or if you just did this, or if you just did that, like criticizing her on something that is not like, it's who he is, and so, but they'll say stuff. I don't get near as, like, people won't say nearly the same things that they say to her every great once in a while, but I have a pretty quick snapback on to people, which is basically like, hey, we have a golden rule. So STFU, if you don't like, if you don't like it, STFU. But anyway, so I just like, it almost brings, and in some ways it does bring like tears to my eyes when people really treat him as a person, which is sad to say because he is a person, but because he's sometimes treated so different, like number one, it breaks my heart, and he doesn't really notice, I don't think, but I do. So when people just treat him like a person, which is sad to say, like it almost makes me like with tears of happiness that here are people that are just treating him like a person. And so anyway, so I was just compelled, because I think a lot of times when we give feedback to places, it's out of places of frustration. So we'll call some place like, oh, the service was terrible, though, whatever it may be, we'll cuss with the waiter because the cook messed up the food or whatever it may be. We got our package from Amazon and it was like the product was crushed, so we're going to leave a bad review, And so I was like, these people probably get complained at, especially in the customer service industry, all the time. The only time they probably ever hear something is when they've done something wrong. Then nobody ever says thank you. Like you've made my whole, and like, let's be honest, we all love to eat, and nothing makes us happier than sitting down to a good meal, and we're full and we're happy. But how many times do we ever say like, thank you for that? We like, and I'll be the first one to say, very rarely do I ever like feel the urge to call somebody because they did something that, sometimes I'll even be kind of jerkish and go, well, they were doing what they were supposed to do, and so I called and so I just was like, hey, I just want to let you guys know, thank you so much, because like you make him happy, that makes me happy. And the manager said, honestly, him coming in every Friday and he's laughing and he's smiling, he goes, that makes me feel good about myself. And so and it wasn't too long after that, corporate called pretty quick. And then so the district manager was like, hey, I heard that you had a concern and you needed, and I was like, hey, listen, I just want to let you know that, the Papa John's over there off of 122nd May is fantastic. I told him what he did. And that district manager was so happy. He's like, man, we almost only hear when like there's a complaint. So like, I just can't like thank you enough for, taking the time to, say something nice.
And that also answers to leadership coaching. Some people already have that in them. Now I got I had some great experiences. I have a motorcycle, and there was a time I needed some spark plugs, a specific type, and I called the company. They had their representative come over, and he had this gauge, explained how to use the spark plug, what purposes to use that, and I was so impressed by that service. And I had a few other great interactions like that. And what I would do every time is I would call those companies and tell them how good their service was. When you let people know that they were excellent, I think it goes a long way in improving their own behavior and approach towards others. Sure, they might be the tip of the iceberg, right? But call them out and appreciate them for what they are doing. That percentage of good just comes around, and it's always that circle of good.
Yeah. So there's two companies that I'm thinking of right now as we're talking about this. One is Stylo with Ronan, where he made a post. And by the way, I just want to say, he's a fantastic person if you can get him on a one-to-one conversation.
I thought he was evil.
No. He's not big SaaS yet, so he's not quite evil.
He's a good friend, so
yeah.
We keep talking.
But he received a cold call, and he was like, okay, the SDR that called him, like the intro was great, the bridge was great, and at some point between the bridge and the setting of the meeting, it kind of broke down a little bit. And so he stopped it and he said, hey, do you mind if I offer you some points of improvement? Like, you've been great so far, but you just lost me. So can I offer you some points of improvement? And so Ronan spent, I don't know how much time, but he spent time with this SDR kind of going, hey, here's what you said. Here's what could have been better. Here's what really could have intrigued me more to get you the meeting. And so it was it just goes back to where, I can think of how many times I get cold called. Not usually it's by AARP, which at first I got excited about that. And then come to find out I'm actually not old enough to qualify for it. So it irritates me because I saw the discounts. First I was offended. And I was like, oh my God, look at all these discounts. And I found out I'm not quite old enough. And then I was offended again. But anyway, so or my car's extended warranty or whatever it may be. But
do teachers get cold called?
Yeah, no, not just now, but earlier, about 15 times today on Medicare. I'm like, come on, guys. I know I'm 45, but Jesus. So anyway, but here's, here he took the time out to really help this guy that improved exponentially his next call and the calls after that. The other one is with Will and William at Lavender, to where they offer their services completely free to students and those that are unemployed. And so in my bleeding heart of service here, it makes me happy to see companies like that are, want to give back to others to help them in their time of need.
For sure. So talking about coaching for a second, if I can jump in here.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
About appreciation and recognition. And I think those are actually two separate concepts. Do you guys agree that they're two separate? Because what I've seen is there's recognition, which is like, hey, employee of the month, or you did something way above and beyond. And so let's recognize you with some special type of a call out. But appreciation is more about something you said, Josh, earlier, where, oh, well, he's just doing his job, right? So appreciation is actually showing, a positive feedback for people who are just for existing, just for doing their job. I think that requires appreciation as well. I don't know. Aamir is giving me the confused. He's got
the curious emoji. Let's have Mandy answer that first, and then I'll jump in.
Well, I would agree that recognition and appreciation are kind of different. When I think of rewards and recognition, those to me are usually you're trying to give somebody something concrete for something that they have done. So if you're giving them an actual award, if you're saying that they earned a gift card or a bonus, you're trying to give them a reward for something that they have, something above and beyond that they've done, that you want to support them and you want that to be a recurring behavior. So you're trying to give positive feedback to go along with getting more of that behavior from that employee or that teammate. But appreciation, I feel, is something different. It's very much like me as a boss, and as a teammate, either way, whether it's either way it goes. It's really me as a genuine person connecting with somebody as a genuine person and being like, I appreciate, I see you and I hear you and you bring value and I want you to know that. You matter and you positively impacted me or my team or our customers. And whichever the three that was, you need to know that you did that, because it would be great if you continued to do that and if you did that 50 times. But even if you only do it the once, I want you to know that I appreciate that you put yourself out there, and maybe you did something hard or uncomfortable, or you supported another person while they were going through something that was hard and uncomfortable. Like in Josh's example with the pizza place, like they easily could have been like, dude, not dealing with your kid. Like it's a $20 pizza. If he's going to scream, we're done. Like we're not having this. But they didn't. They're like, we see that you're a person and you come regularly, and we like giving you joy, and we want to make sure that we're delivering that as often as we can. And also, we probably also understand that as a parent, when you're coming to us regularly, as hard as it might be for us as service people to have a customer yell or be unhappy or have a gag reflex in our restaurant, which nobody wants, nobody wants. We also recognize that you as parents, this is a lot harder for you than it is for us. And if we can support you, then we've all won. Like we did our job as a company, but we've also supported you as a customer. And that's really where the magic happens. So that to me is appreciation.
So we are reducing Josh from churning from Papa John's.
Yes, we are. We're retaining you and hopefully growing your business, because now you have given them a shout out on, your LinkedIn that, hey, go check out Papa John's where I live, because they're awesome. So
well, and then today, I'm gonna do a Yelp review. And by the way, I have a large following on Yelp, just so you guys know. So if you start a restaurant and I visit it and I give you a bad review, my Yelp people are not gonna be like, they're gonna come after you, bro. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I'm kind of an influencer on Yelp. At least that's what the email I get. I don't,
Okay, Kevin, good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree with this, or this might be a bit of an unpopular opinion even. Like, I think every employee at any company deserves to be cared about and appreciated, whether or not they're doing a good job. Now, recognition, I think, is that extra step. That's like when they went above and beyond. And so I don't know that every employee necessarily deserves recognition, because unless you've done something to be deserving of recognition, I think that's a different thing. But I think every employee deserves appreciation, genuine respect, and care, right? Whether or not
appreciation. So I kind of agree with what Mandy said. Appreciation is more personal, or personal towards the team. For example, a leader recognizing, and recognition is like part of wins and all that, but them appreciating someone for their hard work, and that's more of a personal thing. But it's still a company thing, or but coming from a leader, it's 1:1. To your point, Nick, mostly recognition and appreciation is good, unless there are people who really suck or are toxic teammates, etc.
Sure.
Place them in pip or kick them out of your lives.
Fair.
Well, and aside from the fact that somebody is just not qualified to do a certain position, I think when we talk about people that just don't care about what they do, I think we're looking more in the customer service industry and places that are very underpaid. And so, like, for example, my son works fast food, and he's like, sometimes, Dad, I just don't care about this job. And I go, well, I get it, but still do a good job. It doesn't mean that you have to go above and beyond, as long as you just take care of your responsibilities. Of course, he's making a very, very, very low wage. And so, I think sometimes, I guess I have yet to see, unless you're just in that case of burnout, I have yet to see at least, people that just don't do a good job out of spite of not wanting to do a good job. Usually, number one, you've got ignorance I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I haven't been properly trained, so therefore I'm doing a terrible job. Or I'm just in a position, I'm in a position to where I'm so completely underpaid that I don't feel valued, and this is just like, I don't care.
You know, not being valued doesn't mean you don't have to do the work. The company hires you for some purpose. They pay you for a reason, right? And you got to do your work regardless of whether your leadership or your subordinates value you or not. It means you are in a bad situation, and you need to either buckle up if you can't get another job, find something better, or change your approach or mindset so that you can do your work better. So I think that will be the case.
I will say this, though. I kind of agree with what Josh was saying, though. I think most of the time, employees don't show up. Like, nobody's going to take a job, in my view, and just be toxic on day one. I think if there's that entitled feeling, something happened where they maybe got slighted, they maybe felt like they got burned, like there was some sort of
Right.
miscommunication or some sort of situation that occurred that got them to that place. And so,
Some people have bad attitudes. Just to give an anonymous example, I was talking to a friend yesterday, a sales leader, and they're letting someone go who was really unprofessional within their first week itself. So some
yeah.
people just have those attitudes, and you can't help them, right? Even though they need the jobs, or you don't notice those things happening during the hiring phase. But I mean, I've seen that happen too. People being rude to their hiring managers, or just having a generally bad attitude, or vice versa. It's not all one way, right? It can happen either way. But some people do have that attitude, and that's where coaching comes in again. That brings us to the whole issue of coaching. Josh, I believe you were on Whiskey Wednesdays, and the topic of leadership, moving up in management, and then them needing some coaching,
Yeah.
popped up.
Well, and so I will say, not that, and Jesse Lizak and Eddie Bonham. I don't know if I'm saying his last name correctly. Banham. They always have a really, really good Whiskey Wednesday, and but this one seemed to be like off the hook, extra special, just like just wisdom bomb after wisdom bomb after wisdom bomb. It was almost like, when you're playing like Street Fighter and you hit like that 12 combo, and it's like boom, combo breaker, and it's got all these plus 100s. It was like that. I was like, oh my God. Like, I couldn't type fast enough in order to, I'm gonna totally steal all these ideas for posts and discredit the other people for having them so that I get all the recognition. But anyway, so they so they started talking about people that get promoted, so you do a great job. So like, for example, Mandy, who's a supervisor where she's at, so she started kind of towards the the regular people, not and so now not quite the queen that she is now, but she started among the peasants, and she has been promoted up to the queen, the in charge of things. And so then the question, the discussion became there are so many people in that middle management area that then fail. So they do a fantastic job, they get promoted, and then they fail. They're just not. And so the discussion led to talking about, number one, they probably were not listening, watching, and paying attention to what their supervisors were doing in order to replicate that success, or there's just a lack of training at that middle management. So, for example, Nick, you start out as an SDR. We'll just take it at this point. Like, you start out as an SDR. They go, dang, Nick, you're killing it. On setting your appointments. You're doing a fantastic job. We're going to promote you to AE. Nick gets promoted to AE, and then they kind of leave him alone to his own devices, and he does not do a good job because he hasn't He doesn't.
So,
for support.
Nick had his eyes light up for a second when you mentioned AE, and then you said he's not doing a good job, and Nick's like, oh. So, Josh, that's terrible, Josh.
Well, I just like Nick's doing a fantastic job on his TikToks right now. I just want to say that, especially this last one, because when he did that one where he's like, he pretends like he's frozen, and then but he blinks. It reminded me of like, I don't know how many times I've been driving down the road and I just like, I didn't want to hurt somebody's feelings and say I don't want to talk to you anymore. So I'd be like, I'm breaking up. Tunnel, and so like I just had a big laugh. But yeah, so that's where that discussion came from, as they were talking about like you get promoted and then there's just kind of a lack of training at that middle management for you to either move up or to succeed. I mean, number one, you got to succeed in the role you're in before you can move up. So that seems to kind of be one issue that is prevalent at least enough companies to where it's a concern.
Okay.
I got to jump in here because this is like my passion topic. Like there are so many people that move up to middle management. And then once you get to middle management, there are so many expectations because your team needs certain things from you. So it's not I want it, they need it. They need you to share tools. They need you to share tips and tricks. They need you to support them. If they have escalation issues, they need you live time right now, fix it. Help me. This customer is on the phone. Things are bad. Please do this. Like you have to do those things. But your upper management also wants things from you. Like, I need your metrics. I need this graph. I need this. I need that. Some of which you might have never been trained on how to do. And then if you're not excelling at all of those things at the same time, then there gets to be this view that like, oh, well, they're just middle management. They don't really care. Or they don't really know what's going on. And it's like, but who trained these people to be great at what they do? Yeah. And like, if they're new too, like if it's the first time that they've ever been a sales leader, the first time that they've ever been a customer service supervisor, first time they've done whatever in that role, like to believe that they're going to jump, just jump off and be amazing is perhaps not fair. So I would definitely see more training and more support, because I think what Eddie B was saying during Whiskey Wednesday is like, if you were a rock star at your entry level role and then you got promoted, if you were watching what your supervisors and your managers were doing that you liked and that you thought they were doing well, you should be able to observe and mimic and put some of that into play. And I would agree with that. But sometimes we get promoted because our bosses sucked and they left or got fired, and we're stepping up to take on a leadership role because we were great at what we did and we see that there's a need and we want to do better and we want to do more. But you didn't have great leaders and you weren't following great examples. So there was nothing for you to observe because it was sucky. So then you have to try to create that forward momentum for yourself. And I think you can do it. I just think it's hard. Like for me, I learn the most by asking my team, like, what do you need and how can I support you? Because I don't just automatically know. Like sometimes I need them to tell me, like, how can I do this better? And being open to the feedback of how can I do this better? Because I realize I might not be rocking it right out the gate. So.
Well, I'm so glad that Eddie is with us. I'm glad that I said nice things about Whiskey Wednesday instead of what I really felt.
No, he was bad mouthing Eddie. He said Eddie is just a terrible person, and stay away from him. He's a bad influence.
Listen, Jessie has been and if she hears this, she'll be mad at me. But Jessie's been fighting me to do some Canva, and I really haven't done any Canva. And so in the middle of this Whiskey Wednesday, I bust out with a Canva about Tom and Eddie and their hair. And so I love Eddie. I think he's fantastic. In fact,
I love you more.
No, bro, I love you more.
I love you more. I'm all love, man. I have no hatred, no animus against anything. I'm just I love everybody, you know. I don't say it because like you always hear a lot of people saying I love everybody, but I've just learned through a lot of time in life, especially meeting like so many people, that the worst thing you could ever possibly do is hold grudges, because what that does is just waste time. And I remember when I met my wife, she was one of those types of people that would hold grudges, and it would just waste time that we could have together on a more positive note. And with time, she learned that what's the point of holding grudges? Like, why not just show love? Because at the end of the day, there's just more impact in the time spent together. So I've just always been that type of person. And I just believe there's more in being good with people because you can absorb more in return. So it's just easier this way.
I do have your number, Eddie. I'm gonna complain about you to your wife.
What? She knows
You
I don't
are
talk behind anybody's back. I never talk behind people's back. I'll just, things that I know are factual, I'll say it. And this was factual. So.
Well, no, and this was like, and this brought up that whole, like, I made that post about revenue development representatives, because that was kind of like, you know, because we keep talking about, you know, the bringing sales, marketing, even customer success together to create, I don't necessarily want to say like full cycle, but at least you're creating that awareness, you're creating that interest, and then you're kind of following through. And so that kind of created that interesting dynamic away from like siloed, everything being so siloed together.
So I've been through silos before, they suck. You know, Mandy, I loved what you said. And here's the thing. Many people, so there are three things that I've observed during my journey. One of my friends is a very successful, you know, co-founder of a huge company now. And when he was, you know, in the early stages of his career, he was coached. The company, you know, had them take leadership training and had them, you know, upskill and be leaders. And I believe that helped them, you know, a huge amount in getting to where they were. Other companies just, you know, throw in people, promote people, and they might just take those unlearned attitudes, you know, sometimes grumpy attitudes, sometimes bad attitudes towards work and other people, attitudes towards, you know, leadership, or, you know, responsibility, shirking responsibility. So there are so many things that are not trained or inculcated, and that really affects middle management. And the third thing is that some people do have that ability naturally, and they grow to be good leaders, but you know, they have to have those empathy skills, you know, the relationship skills, the people management and people interaction skills. I believe a lot of salespeople do have it, but many more don't, because I see, you know, people becoming sales VPs, etc. But they take the SDR or the initial sales roles. I think the same happens with marketing as well, right? So they take the same approach. But when you're in a leadership role, those, you know, you need to broaden your horizons and take a more inclusive and leadership oriented approach, which does not often happen.
Okay, so I have a question, and this can, like, because Mandy's a supervisor, Nick is kind of in a leadership position, Eddie's in kind of a leadership position. Aamir, you've had leadership positions, you're a leader. So here's my question to all of y'all. If I step into a role, because we all know that I'm transitioning out of the education sector and I will be starting in at a role, right? And ultimately, my goal is to kind of move up the ladder to a certain extent. So knowing that I will end up in a leadership position, is it my responsibility to be proactive, to get coaching on to be a leader, rather than ending up
Yes.
there and going, oh my God, now I don't know what to do. Now I don't know what to do because I didn't receive coaching. Ultimately, where does that responsibility lie then?
It lies
With
with
you.
you.
Okay.
I mean,
Always with you.
everyone nodded. Everyone nodded instantly, so that's not even a question.
If you're looking to be a leader, then it absolutely lies with you. Now, there have been people who've been put into a leadership position who haven't wanted to be in leadership positions, and so I think it's unfair to expect them beforehand to have gone, and learned all of that. But once they're in that leadership position, now that you're tied to that role, then they have to learn it.
Yeah, I agree with Nick. One thing that I would add on is if you look at pattern for any business and you see stagnation when a person's been put in place, the reason why a business will stagnate with specific leadership is because there's no progression within the individual to allow that progression to be carried forward in the team. So if you have somebody, and this is where you always see some of the best leaders of industries are always relating back to the people who have taught them. And that respect is what other leaders respect in turn, because they know that mentorship is crucial for growth. You only know so much as a leader going into a position. If you literally dispense everything onto your team and you have nothing left to give, you're going to continue to stagnate because now it becomes status quo. But what ends up happening, if you have someone who can give you additional help, things that are above and beyond the knowledge that you currently have, that you can then translate onto your team for growth purposes, then the team in turn grows. And that's how it's always going to be, which is why I go back to the idea a second ago saying you see a lot of the leaders out there when they go for these awards or they get accolades or they're, getting put into positions where they're having to speak about what they did to grow a specific entity or whatnot, they're always resulting back to the mentorship they've been given. And that's just a pattern that we've seen over time. And I want to just step back for a second. LinkedIn is a big proponent of this. Now, you're going to see a lot of stuff. I mean, I talk, everybody talks, everybody posts. None of us are perfect. I have mentorship till today. Even if I'm going to mentor someone, I'm going to have mentorship myself because I'm never going to know it all. But the best thing for me to do is to grow as a person and continually and perpetually and progressively help others. And that's the objective.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think leadership is both art and science. And so There's something that Aamir said, which is there are some people who are born leaders, but you don't have to be a born leader, right? It can be learned. So
it's always learned. Again, Marcus Kauke is one of the top leadership coaches out there. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to join today. So me and he, we keep speaking all the time. So most of these traits can be taught, right? That's what he always says. So leadership training can be done. The way to become a good leader is to have good mentors, to have good coaches. And to name a few names, I saw Adam J of Reprise, getting a coach. Then Todd Capone, he's super famous. He said, he had a coach as well. You wouldn't even imagine that a person of their stature would, need coaching, but yes, they're still going in for leadership coaching, and which tells you that, you always know so little and about the areas that you do want to progress in as leaders, as people who are, going to talk to other people, be in positions of leadership. Coaching is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And most people are very lucky because they already have a leader in their organization that they're in. The problem is they don't take advantage of it. So, and I say this because right now I'm sorry I'm resulting to me in this, but I'm just saying it because I'm in a position now that I can actually embellish in. So I've just entered into a position working under someone who's very well known in the SaaS space, Tim Savage, who has an abundance of experience in sales, like a plethora of experience. And when he speaks, I don't talk. You can even ask him, I'll just shut up. Because when he speaks, it's through experience. And for anybody who gets into sales, who will, let's say, have all of these different people talking at them all the time about all these different tactics and overarching strategies, you have to cut through the noise. And the people to listen to are the ones who have been in the trenches, those who have been put in these very difficult situations before. And I don't even have to question my leadership because other people before I joined this organization had told me about my leader, had said, this person has gone through it all. They've taught, he's taught thousands of people behind him. So I know what I'm going to get out of that. So he now becomes a mentor for me. You see, you can take the action and you can exercise mentorship where you are, or you can exercise it through something that's external. But it's the best way to succeed in both life and also in a professional setting. because
Agreed.
you're only limited by what you know. So the only way to learn is to be able to ask. And this is where the listening component comes in, not just to hear, but to listen and embellish in the listening. Which is why you always have to be very humble about it and know you don't know everything. Sometimes you just know shit, right? Like there's some things I don't know shit about. And I'm not going to say I know about it because I'll look like an idiot. But then I only limit myself to the things I do know so that I don't look stupid. And that's what LinkedIn sometimes does, is it really throws out shit to people. But if you go back and question it, this is when that idiocracy happens. Right.
Well,
I probably
that most of what you said I agree with, but there's something you said that maybe I'll challenge a little bit, and I'd actually like to hear from the group. You said everybody's lucky. Most people are lucky because they have a leader in their current position that they can look up to. I don't know that that's the case. I know I'm very lucky where I'm at.
It isn't. It isn't the case.
That's why I said most.
Well,
that's why I said
no.
most.
Actually, most are unlucky, is what I'll say, Eddie.
Well,
going by the amount of, look at all of these SaaS companies failing. Look at companies just going down the drain. And there's a good leader. Welcome on board, Ricky. And here's a good leader if you ever.
And ladies, who we got?
Ricky.
I've got to get so close to my phone here. Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Well, and I would say that, and I kind of made this comment last time on the Whiskey Wednesday, was that LinkedIn, as much as they preach against bandwagons, is a big bandwagon. And so what will happen is somebody that is and I'll use this in like air quotes, that is a thought leader, will post that this is the correct way to do it, which may be against like conventional best practices that is successful, and people will jump on that bandwagon that because so and for example, I'll use Justin Michaels, who or not Justin Michaels, but I mean we can use Justin Michaels, who will, he might say something which is against best practice, people are having huge success, and you'll say, well, this is wrong. And then people, because he has a large following, will go, oh, well, Justin might be right. And this is not saying anything towards Justin Michaels, but it doesn't matter who it is. I mean, we could talk about any of these so-called gurus out there, because they have a large following. People will jump on that bandwagon, what they say is gospel because of who they are. So like for example, I'll like talk about Dale. Dale is a fantastic individual, but Dale is the type of person that if he, and not that he does, I don't want to like get people on my rear end because I'm saying something negative about Dale, and I wouldn't, because the conversation I had with Dale was probably one of the most vulnerable, raw moments I've ever had on an interview before. But if Dale was to say, no, I don't care what everybody else is saying, this is the right way, people would go, oh, well, this must be the right way because Dale is saying it's the right way. And because he has a large following, people are more attuned to go, okay, well, let's follow Dale. And Eddie made kind of this comment the other day where we were, and Tom, it was a discussion with Tom and Eddie where they were talking about short form versus long form post. And so and you get Chris Walker on there where he's saying, people are saying that long form post or, long videos don't get any views. But the discussion came about talking about, well, people will sit down for Lord of the Rings and watch it for 12 straight hours, or they'll read an entire novel. So it's more about the value, but we find ourselves entrenched in thought leadership into what is correct, regardless if that is not correct or not.
What works for someone might not essentially work for you.
Yeah.
Another thing I see, one of the things that I think is actually a challenge with LinkedIn is when we're making a post, I mean, there's a character limit. It doesn't matter what you're putting out there. And so there's a lack of nuance, right? And so I think it's kind of ridiculous for people to look at something that's a short post, even a long post, on LinkedIn and say, oh, that's 100% correct in all circumstances, that's kind of ridiculous. Like, seriously, there are so many different variables. And so I think what happens is a lot of people, they're forced because of the medium to put content out in certain parameters. And the other thing is, if you want to have strong writing, if you want to have presence, right, you have to eliminate a lot of those uncertain sounding words and sound really confident. And because of that, you may end up saying something is, oh, this is 100% the right way to do it, when in reality, what you are trying to convey is, hey, this is working really well for me in the circumstances that I have under the variables that I have, but it doesn't mean that it's going to work 100% well for you in your circumstance with all your different variables, right?
Right. Well, and if I had listened to what people are talking about right now, like the post I made today with my autistic kiddo, which, don't get me wrong, I followed the Eddie method of let me start with a good hook here, because we all need a good hook. And, as a writing teacher, the first thing I tell students is you need a good hook in order to get your audience reading. But I wouldn't have made my post nearly as long. I wouldn't have created this story. I would have just said, hey, Papa John's is awesome because they did what they were supposed to do and they created a great experience with me and my son, the end. But instead, if you look at some of the stuff that Eddie does and he has kind of a strategy behind this, but he creates this story. And the really good people that can create long content, they do this. They create a very good hook, and then they kind of take you through this range of emotions, and they finally come to the end, and they still leave you going, man, I wish this post could have gone on. And
it doesn't always have to be a story, though, right?
No, it can be straight to the point. And I've learned, and talking about, I've learned a ton from Ricky through these, because being on LinkedIn, you think SaaS is the only thing that's out there. And so if I get in and talk about sales, we assume that SaaS is the only thing out there. But then I was talking to Ricky the other day, and he started talking about the park benches. He started talking about the sun. Yeah, it's right there. He said, well, Josh, there's somebody that set up this, we need park benches all over the city. And there is somebody that set up this meeting. There's somebody that created the entire experience all the way to the very end. And when we need more park benches, we're going to reach out to that same person. So you have this. It was the very first time I had heard of the term full cycle sales, because prior to talking to Ricky, the only thing that I knew was there were SDRs, there were AEs, there were account managers, and so you had this segmented, almost siloed sales where everybody kind of has their spot in this place. And then Ricky all of a sudden starts talking about that there are salespeople that lead from the beginning all the way to the end, and I'm like, wait a minute, you mean there's something different out there than what everybody else is talking about? Let me hear more. So, yeah.
I think full cycle is actually more common than the division of labor. I mean, not in SaaS specifically, but if you look industry, cross industry, for most industries, especially in small business, because they don't have a ton of resources to have that division of labor, and a bunch of people focused on generating leads and some people focused on closing deals. Most small businesses, most other industries, I think full cycle tends to be more common.
SDR, the term SDR is unheard of in most industries.
Mm-hmm.
There's absolutely full cycle, and obviously half of this world is fucking physical, more than half. The metaverse hasn't taken over yet. SaaS sales isn't everything. There's a massive skew that you get from that on LinkedIn. Who's on there? When you're learning about sales from sales leaders, it's often enterprise sales leaders. They've got $100 million budgets, and they're telling you how to structure your sales. And it doesn't always translate to most other people. And you really have to pick your audience. you get your boxes there, Josh. So your experience and what's working for you is that box that you're in within LinkedIn, which is already skewed by who's on LinkedIn and who's creating content on LinkedIn.
Okay, so I feel like we've, and forgive me if I'm, hijacking the conversation here, but we were talking about leadership and coaching, and I feel like we diverged a little bit, and we were talking about posting, and we have the benefit of having Ricky and some great leaders here. And so I'm curious from the group, like, what is it that a team needs from a leader in any situation? Like, what are the fundamental characteristics, the fundamental things that a team always needs from a leader?
Ricky, you answer that. You're leading a bunch of teams these days. And then go ahead after that.
I mean, there's so many nuances to leadership, and if I was to give you my answer, because obviously I didn't come to this live feed particularly prepared with my fact sheet, so you're going to have a lot of recency bias of like what was most important to me in my leadership last week. But I think the challenges that I have with my team in leading them is setting the tone, setting that culture of how we treat people. When mistakes happen, teaching them how we as a group respond to those mistakes. When people aren't doing what they need to do, teaching them as a team how we treat that. Keeping things consistent is really important, because to me that's part of what drives culture, and helping people be the best version of themselves.
Now, you know what, Ricky, I like that, because here's what I really love about this, because Ricky is in a different kind of we talk about sales as this all-encompassing, like there's a sales, and then that's all there is to it. But if we look at the difference between Ricky, and we look at the difference between Eddie, and we look at the difference between Nick, like it's a night and day difference between those three areas of sales. And then even if we look at Mandy, who is in a sales environment, but on the the customer success side, like it's also completely different. And so you have these, with these four people, you have four different experiences, and all of them are correct, none of them are wrong, but they're all different.
Yeah,
Eddie,
I see it as the way that I look at things, and I agree with Ricky. I mean, I'm with him 100%. The one thing that I've always done and looked to others to do with me, let's say other leaders, is first and foremost working as a collective. A lot of the times, and somebody touched on it before, you see a lot of siloing happening, a lot of it all the time. Now, bringing a team together, and now it's actually better than it was before, because you have some of these tools out there, like, for example, something like Slack, that allows people to be virtually all together and speak vocally and have their opinions shared and have a lot of these objectives, put together, and etc. The other thing that I like is empathy. We see a lot of it on LinkedIn, but how many people are actually practicing empathy, right? Being able to talk to somebody and truly understand and put themselves in that person's shoes. Okay, Dad, we'll go home. Sorry, my son is with me. But being able to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And then the other one is listening. As much as we say salespeople need to listen to their end users, sales leaders also need to listen to those in the echelon that are, I'm not going to call it under, because I don't believe in that, kind of the hierarchy. It's, again, working together, but listening to those within your team. Because sometimes you're going to have a person who's going to come to you with a great idea. And I know everybody on this call has seen this before, and sometimes you get dismissed, or you're told that something will be exercised, and unfortunately it doesn't, or that person takes credit for it. Working together and empowering that person and awarding them for the work that they've done is huge, right? A lot of people want that recognition. They want to be recognized for the effort that they've put in. So working together as a collective helps. And then you get a better end result, and the output ends up being larger, and then the result ends up being more positive.
Welcome, Jason.
Josh, could I add a nuance here?
No, I wish you would.
I think there's a big difference, and it's important for the conversation to separate leadership and management, right? Because often, I mean, a lot of it, there's similarities and commonalities between the two, but they also need to be separated. So the way I look at it is very simply, if a person had this capacity from 0 to 100, management is getting as close to that 100 out of a person, right? What leadership is increasing the total value of that 100, so someone has more potential. And importantly, when you take a group of 10 people and add up their hundreds, it might be 1,000. Leadership is making sure that the sum of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Okay, so here's my question for you, Ricky. And maybe this is and I'm just coming from an educational background where my management is going to be my principals. And so my principals have been teachers. So they have been, or should have been, in the trenches at the same spot I'm in. So what is the difference between management and leadership, and why should management not be expected to have leadership principles?
Oh, they absolutely should. Like, ideally they should, right? But those leadership principles that you talk about is often just, well, are they following the cultures that the real leaders are trying to implement within their team, so that they're leading, so that they are managing using those principles? There's that old, it's a bit vapid, but that old saying of, good leaders create followers and great leaders create leaders. So absolutely having your management, which are future leaders, managing and being leaders. Leadership isn't a position, right? So when you say like your leaders were principals, your managers were principals, right? The leaders were the one that were collectively getting people and making them better versions of themselves, or making the team greater than the sum of the individuals. To me, leadership really isn't a position. It's a behavior.
Ooh, I love that. And so
there's individual contributors. Sorry for interrupting. There's individual contributors who are phenomenal leaders, right? How many people who are like that? You ever see like a team of people and there's one person who's maybe an individual contributor, but they spend a lot of time trying to help the rest of their teammates? Like, that person is a good leader. Even if they're not in a management position, they're a force multiplier, right? They're helping everybody else succeed. They're helping other people advance, and they're making the team more successful. That person is a leader, even if they're not in a management position.
Well, I'm going to challenge you not challenge you. I'm going to go off your idea one step further, that you get the reverse too in a lot of organizations, where some people are phenomenal leaders and are taking people in the wrong direction because people follow them. They're the detractors in the organizations. They're the ones that when you merge, when you take over a new company, if you can't get them on your team, you fire fucking as quickly as you can, because they will bring you down, because everyone will follow them.
That's a great point.
Well, and so here's the reason why I brought up the principle is because, like, at least where I'm at, and I know that there are not very good administrators, because I've had some pretty bad administrators, but where I'm at, if I ask my assistant or my head principal, hey, can you step in my classroom? They may not necessarily know the subject matter, because we all teach something different, because we're all segmented at this point, whether you're English or history or math or whatnot, but they can still control the chaos. Like, they can still step in, look at the objectives, and go, okay, cool. So here's how I'm going to do this. And so, like, I could go to Mandy and I could say, hey, show me every possible scenario that I could run into. And Mandy could go, sure, this is going to take a while, but yes, I can show you how to handle every objection, every upset customer, so she could coach me through. She would provide a leadership environment through every situation. And I have the same feeling, again, like if I went to Aamir and I said, hey, Aamir, now I'm in project management, which is a whole nother conversation, but and we have this situation. Aamir could go back and go, okay, well, we need to start here. So he could provide that leadership. The same thing for Ricky, the same thing for Nick. So at what point are we not demanding that our management also be leaders and able to coach and lead?
Well, ideally, I think you want all of your managers to be able to coach and lead. But again, I think this goes right back to that conversation about how well versed is your middle management. Like, are they leaders? Have they had training? Do they know what's needed from them and how best to support their team? Because if they don't, they can manage maybe, but they can't lead. Because to me, leaders, there's something different in a leader than a manager. Managers tend to be task focused and they're trying to accomplish specific goals. Leadership does that as well. They do all of those things, but there's also an aspirational part to a leader. Leaders are trying to develop their talent. Leaders are trying to lift people up. Leaders are trying to make a path forward. And that is a very different skill set than just managing. Managing is maintaining a status quo or possibly growing to meet a quota versus really developing a path.
Josh, was your question? I felt like when you were asking your question, it seems like there's some competency a little bit, because there's people who get in management roles, and there's even people who are leaders who don't necessarily have competence in the area of the people who they're managing or leading.
Yeah. Okay. So Nick, and that's a fantastic question, because let me rephrase it a different way. I am hired into your company, and I say your company as in, the company like Aamir or Mandy or Ricky or Jason or Nick. Like I'm hired at the bottom level, right? And so now it is your responsibility to not only train me, but coach me and lead me to be successful. And not only in that position, but to take over your position. And to me, and this is just me, it seems like I should expect, whether I go to work for Ricky or whether I go to work for Mandy or Nick or Aamir or even Jason, that I should get coaching and leadership to lead me to be successful, not only in the position I'm at now, but moving up into the position that they are now.
So I was going to disagree.
Well, it's such a nuanced decision, because the leadership, right, is just like this, has so many connotations, so many different synonyms. So many different like objective and subjective definitions. So if someone's job is to train you, well, are they not just doing their job? Right? Like, is every trainer a leader? Like in some ways, yes, they influence others' outcomes, but so would a manager. So I think that the conversation has to be more nuanced than that. Right? Like if every person was a cog in a part of a car, the driver is the leader. They're deciding, are we going left or right? They're leading the discussion. They're leading the movements. They could be really shit at that. They could be a shit driver, but a lot of people still call them the leader. They're making the strategic decisions. So I think you have to go more nuanced into the discussion of that manager's job. Which part of it is leadership and which part of it is written into the job description and him just doing it well?
Yeah, another thing. Well, go ahead.
Okay. So Josh, here's the thing. If you were hired to do a job, say marketing, you wouldn't expect your direct manager to be coaching you on leadership, because they still have a job to do, and most often, they won't have time for you. They could direct you to courses or something like that, or leadership camps that you could take, provided you want to be a leader. But most of the times when companies hire you, it's for a specific purpose, and you're expected to learn after some onboarding what you need to do in that role. Apart from that, you need good management who will alleviate your skills and elevate yourself and make you a better leader. But that's icing on the cake. That's not going to be part of the coaching process initially. And I'm talking about the lower to middle run, when you are in this senior leadership, you will be expected to get coaching. Companies will proactively get you to classes, get you to coaches, but that takes time.
So let me ask this then, because this
Nick, sorry, Nick was saying something.
You actually you went where I was going to go, so I'm good.
Well, and here's where I'm curious, because this can be like everybody can chime in on this, because so when as an educator, when we receive what we call professional development, but when we receive coaching and how to be better, which at our job, which I would consider like instructional leadership, uh, they usually bring in somebody that is a waste of our time, and that's putting it nicely, right? And I mean, and when I say putting it nicely, I mean that, like, let's just throw the baby out with the bathwater, because the baby's worthless at this point. But and so in my experience, when we receive coaching to be better, it is, and I can say this from personal experience and the experience of many, many educators, it is almost 99% somebody that, if you like, they're just not good. They just don't really have the experience. They and so what happens is you end up with these. I'll give you a prime example. Let me give you a prime example. We went to this, and I'm almost 17 years into my career, and I've seen every type of student, every type of just anything and everything that can be thrown at you in education. I've seen it in 17 years. And so we get this person to lead us in this professional development, how to be more effective teachers. Okay, so here's the training. Like, this is supposed to be a leadership person. This is supposed to train us to be better at our jobs, right? Person has never taught a day in their life. And they bring this candy to talk about the different personality types. One of our teachers is like, if they so much as smell peanut butter or any kind of like nuts or anything like that, they will go into anaphylactic shock. You know what they do? They kick her out of the meeting because like they have Butterfingers in it. Yeah. So the first thing they do is they remove anybody that is going to create an obstacle in the learning environment. And then they start doing stuff like, well, you see, these Twix are because you have different sides, and you're going to have to come down the middle and bring the two as to one. Like, and we're like, all of us are just.
So, Josh, some coaches are good, many aren't.
Right.
There are some self-professed coaches that we see on LinkedIn as well.
Like Nick is like, man, do I want peanut butter or do I want Twix at this point? Like, but I mean, no, it is literally like that. And the
Hold
guy
on.
is like, and the guy said, the Skittles is.
So, Josh, here's your leadership question.
Colors of students you will have, and we were like, who are you?
So Josh, let me ask you on that, right? Here would be my comment on leadership with regards to that situation. Did you feel comfortable to go to the person who was responsible for coaching and development for your department or for your company and give them that exact feedback in that exact format? That's the part of leadership that's interesting, not how good of a coach this person was.
Oh, I like that, because the answer is, Ricky, no. Because here's how I would have felt. Like, and let's just say, because and I want to preface this by saying I know that you would not have set anything up like this, but let's say you did. No, I would not feel comfortable going to you, because number one, you set up this ridiculous scenario in the first place. So number one, I know you have no clue what's going on. And number two, I know that whatever I say, you're just going to placate with me, go, okay, Josh, right. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, we understand your concern. So the answer to that,
Didn't you have feedback loops at all for any of these things? Or I mean, we do this all the time, even in project management. There are retrospectives. You end a project, you talk to the other project manager, your counterparts. Hey, this went well. This didn't go so well. You give them feedback. Other companies give you feedback, and that's an absolute necessity.
So now I'll go one step further, right, Aamir? So now you've got feedback loops, but now feedback loops are part of the system, right? So now part of the system you can't call leadership. Again, all right. So who's bringing in the culture of vulnerability and empathy so that people are comfortable dealing with that, feel good about it, and that feedback actually helps?
So I am the aggressive one, so I'd probably, do a Ricky there and be that annoying pest who spoke up, but not everyone does that, unfortunately.
Well, I think it's incumbent upon the leader to create that atmosphere where feedback is sought and received, and not necessarily always acted upon, but at least considered, right? And then there's some sort of communication as to, yes, thank you, we've received this feedback, and here's what we're going to do next. Here's the vision that we're setting in terms of where we're going forward, right?
And the real strong leaders are looking at the ones who didn't give the feedback and saying, now that I've created a strong culture of feedback, why is this person not fitting in with the culture? Why don't they feel safe, psychologically safe, to give feedback? Or just is it that they don't give a fuck to make things better? Either way, we have to deal with this.
For sure.
All right. So Jason, you just joined us, and we've said a ton of stuff.
Yep.
What are your thoughts about anything and everything?
So all I can say is that from my military background, leadership was kind of management, right? We had ranks, we had different positions, different responsibilities. When I came back civvy side, it just evaporated. It's just like you guys said, management's there for status quo. Leadership is there to build people and to bring them higher than they are. Inspire them, be that visionary and such, right? So like everyone's had some great points about, how, there's for example, the feedback loops you guys were saying, but then you can get stuck in that kind of spiral because it's just kind of perpetuating the same thing and not changing anything, versus like someone that would actually stick up and be like, I want to hear the truth. I want to hear, what sucks, what's good. Those are the people that, really inspire and bring people up and are the cornerstone of their organization. Right. So, but in the SaaS world or anything like that, I haven't had a lot of experience with that. I had one great VP at my first company, which was awesome. But it's different. Like, because SaaS is not so much typical business. It's like a mathematical formula for most people, right? This many calls, this many meetings, this many show ups, this many demos, blah blah blah. And that's what I just kind of realized about a month ago. It's like, well, SaaS isn't really like what I would want to do, because I would want to be like, I'm the face of the company. I'm the one that's in charge of getting new clients, keeping clients. But again, like SaaS silos everything, right? You have your prospectors, then you have your AEs, then you have your AMs and CS and all that stuff. And so that was the thing that's been really interesting. And especially when Aamir and everyone talks about gurus and all these we'll call them false prophets almost on LinkedIn and everything like that. Like they're just all about, just self-promotion. And they're really not there to help anyone other than just to feed their own ego.
Ricky, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you can't disagree. Like, I think, I mean, you could disagree in that I don't think it's systemic in everyone in the industry. Again, I think like everything we see on LinkedIn is our bubble, and maybe there's obviously a skew within that on LinkedIn. But I know some phenomenal leaders within SaaS. But also, like, 20%, 10% of people are content creating on LinkedIn. Like it isn't a honest and accurate reflection of the real world. And I don't think we could ever take it as that.
It's true because you only see like this little bubble of where we are, right? I mean, there's the CTO of the NSA, or is it CIA now, posting, which is just, you know, kind of like strange. But generally speaking, it's only like that small percentage that are actually creating content and interacting with people. So it's almost like an echo chamber in that way.
There's selection bias. The people who are on the platform, right? There's a selection because some people don't even get on the platform, and then the people who do get on the platform, only a percentage of them actually post, and the stuff that gets put in your feed is based on the people that you've rang the bell on or the people that you interact with. So there's this selection bias is implicit in LinkedIn, no matter what you do.
You know what?
Yeah, I told Josh to stop liking all these teacher posts.
No,
that's all that keeps
I don't know
showing up in my feed.
No, and I'll go back to what I've said numerous times is I was like, well, I'll post on this because teachers won't eat their own. And what happened was the teachers that are being successful and going against the status quo are being blocked. And I mean, that's the nicest way I could put it. They're being
silenced.
Yeah. They're like, oh, well, Josh is saying something different from this person that is like, I liken it back to the prosperity gospel, and like this is I love this example for some reason, but you get somebody on the prosperity gospel that is like, oh dear Lord, if you just give, and it doesn't like regardless of what your situation in life is, like things will be okay. And it doesn't matter if you've bombed out of your 417th interview, you like, and this is probably a discussion for another day, but like you end up with people going, oh, don't you worry, your opportunity is right around the corner. And I've said this so many times that we get this toxic positivity to where people are like, oh, you failed it again and again and again and again, but that's okay, don't you worry, because things are gonna like, no, it's not at all. But you have people that regardless, and I'm not going to name names, regardless of how like poor their presentation is and their advice is, they end up getting lucky. And so then people will take that as gospel and go, oh, well, they were lucky, so therefore they must be correct. And like my mind blows. And Aamir and I have these discussions constantly. And if you could see some of the discussions we have, it would cause a Catholic to like, well, I don't know about a Catholic. They might not blush because Catholics are into some kind of crazy things. But I mean, like,
you're out of words now.
Yeah. I'm like at this point, everybody listen.
Yeah, you take a minute, go get a whiskey. I don't know, something. This seems to have hit a nerve. But Josh,
there we go.
There's other things we don't talk about, which is like, I've been in a leadership role before where like I was so fucking busy every day. I had so many different demands on me that it was incredibly. I have all of these leadership ideals. I love to give people I want to do things one way, but I've got so much on my plate that I don't achieve those leadership ideals, right? And like, I don't know, like to me, leadership is it's a challenge that a lot of people face. A lot of people face it in different ways. There's lots of different levels of leadership, at an individual level, at a company level, at a strategic level, like how many people can you influence at once and in what? Like people might come to me for help and leadership or guidance in one particular area, but I've got deficits and weaknesses in another. So maybe a part of leadership is just recognizing where you can't help people. Is something a good leader would do to say, yes, I'm the person you come to for advice. This is not something you should come to me for advice on. Maybe try somewhere else. If you like, so I think it really, it's a nuanced conversation. And it's unfortunately, LinkedIn is not the place you're going to find the answer. because what you're going to find on LinkedIn is a place that just resonates with all of your biases, like the selection bias that Nick discussed, through to confirmation bias when you see inspirational posts that just validate what you already think.
Ricky, I love that because, at any point, any one of us that are on this live right now could be promoted into an opportunity to where we could not reply to the masses like we normally do. For example, if I message Ricky, even on WhatsApp, within reason, he's going to respond to me. Same thing with Nick. Like Nick sends me, he's like, hey, check this out. And I'm like, cool. So we have this diatribe, like we conversate. And same thing with Mandy and Aamir. And if I message Jason, like the same thing. But it wouldn't take too many opportunities to where they were promoted. And like with Nick, for example, who is like,
it's not like that though.
Like I would have to make an appointment with like Nick's like secretary in order to have this conversation. Nick and I
no, Josh. So that's part of your networks. For example, you can talk to Dale directly. I can't. I could talk to some other people directly that you couldn't, and the same for Nick.
I agree with Aamir on this. I think it's not a question of the position; it's the question of priority, right? Because there's people who are DMing me right now that I don't respond to, and it's not that I don't want to; it's that time is precious, right? And so anybody who's out there, if you're creating a voice and you have an audience of people that like I have hundreds of people who are vying for my time, and I pick and choose where I spend my time. And I try to pick a situation where there's a win-win, right? Where if I'm spending time with people who win because I'm able to share things that help them, right? That's great. And then also if I can win because I'm learning things from those same people, those are the people I want to surround myself with. There's a lot of win-lose situations because there's certain people who will ask for your time. They need some help. And I think it's good to do some of that, but you have to manage that, right? If you spend all of your time just giving to people without spending any time considering like, hey, here's the things that are on my priority list, you can get yourself in trouble really quick.
And Nick, it goes one step further that I think a lot of leaders and people in senior positions especially have situations where everything's win-win, potentially, more or less. But even within that, it's a complicated scenario. If I give you a quick scenario, if you have a member on your team who's not performing well, right? What would all the gurus say? Like, how do you handle that? Oh, you coach them up. You help them, you nurture them, you make them the best version of that they can. But what happens if that takes away some of your valuable time, and now the team as a whole or the company as a whole isn't as successful because you can't move as quickly? So the other 100 people aren't going to earn the money that they potentially could to support their families. Like the butterfly effect on every decision you make is massive. And sometimes the best decision that leader could make is say to that individual, you know what, someone could help you. You are not unsavable, but I currently don't have the capacity to help you, and you need to go find some help at another company. And for the sake of the team, I've got to.
Yep.
Go, Aamir.
100%. And that same thing goes to Josh, what you were saying earlier, that not everyone would have the time to coach you within your role because they simply don't have the time, and they've got like 20 different things going on. And here's a great thing you said, Nick. I was talking to Zineb on LinkedIn, or Amelia, they're good friends, right? And it's all about the art of saying no. I mean, when do you stop saying, I stopped, helping people, unfortunately. I mean, I do help people, but, I kind of taken a step back because it's a lot of time, it's a waste of time because people just won't listen to advice, and that's not going to benefit either you or the person you're trying to help. So, it's best to, I shared some examples with Josh as well, and he was like, okay, so.
No, that's not true. Everything that Aamir sends to me, I treat as gospel. I just want you to know that.
But hold on, we know your feeling about gospel. Do you treat it as prosperity gospel?
No. Okay. So here's what. Okay. So I have to give my church a shout out, and I'll be perfectly honest with you that I don't always go to church to get the message because the church that I'm at has a program called Wonderfully Made, where they specifically take in not only like children and adolescents, but adults that have autism. And so they have invested quite a bit because they do pay for this. So they have invested a decent amount of money into bringing in professionals that are used to working with those with disabilities and autism. And so for me, which don't get me wrong, I love Jesus. So please don't take this wrong in any way. But in some ways, it's a way for me to just give a sigh of relief, relax, know that my son is cared for by people that care for him, and not have to worry about anything else. And so, which is really hard to describe to somebody that doesn't have the same challenges, and I don't make any I don't feel any sorts of way by somebody who doesn't have that same experience or not. But yeah, so I will be honest and say that there are times when I go to church just to get a break and be able to sit there and sigh and just relax while I know that my son is cared for by people that love him. So there is that. So
that sounds like some good leadership over there, Josh.
No, it's we've been, honestly, here's the thing, Ricky. It's funny. I don't even know if it's funny that you mentioned that, but it's interesting you mentioned that because we used to go to church a lot because regardless if you believe in the message or not, there is something to be said about, at least for me, and this is just a personal experience. And I've been to many different type of churches, not just Christian churches, but there's something to be said about going in and hearing just a positive message, regardless of what the message is, as long as it is positive. Like, I feel renewed, right? And so we have been to so many places that we're not able to cater towards our specific needs. And again, I make no judgment call on this. Like, I totally get it. And so it's just relaxing to not have to worry. And I hate to say this, but it's relaxing to not even have to worry about your kid running out and getting hit by traffic for an hour for you just to like, what are you talking about? Cool. I embrace it. Absolutely love it.
Thanks, Josh. That was eye-opening.
Thanks, Josh.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to but no, I say that because it's one of the challenges that we face, and it is definitely not one of the challenges that I expected. Because here's the thing: when you think about having kids, you think about, oh, I'm gonna have whether it's a boy or a girl, or a boy and a girl, or multiple boys, multiple girls, and you think about, oh, cool, this is gonna happen, and I'm gonna do this, and because I'd be the first to say, yeah, I was going to have a boy and then a girl. We were going to get a football practice and cheerleading practice and all like normal things. And that happened at all. And so we ended up like right now we're in a situation to where we're just trying to get proper care for him, and in order to get the care that he needs, it's going to run us $24,000 a month $24,000 a month. So, you know, part of like, if I look at careers, I'm like, well, I need to go into sales because I need to at least make $290,000 a year just to get him the therapy that he needs. So I don't know. Maybe,
Josh, I feel like it would be a lot cheaper to try get citizenship in another country. Just saying.
you know, it's interesting that you say that because I was like, maybe this is a discussion that we should have next Saturday about America healthcare versus
Everyone else.
everyone else.
Yeah. Great conversation. I'll sleep in for that one.
Okay.
Same.
Yeah. Well, and it's the same. Like Aamir and I have had this discussion before about metric versus standard. I'm like, you know, Aamir, if you guys would just use like metric, standard, like, you know, instead of metric, you know, because standard is like, it's standard across the United States, and you know, you guys are strange for using metric like the
Stop
other.
it.
So the whole of Europe is weird. Okay.
No,
Stop it, Josh.
Josh, you're 100% right, and this is what you'll get on LinkedIn, right? You'll get someone saying, "Absolutely, Josh, it makes perfect sense that 12 inches makes a foot and 3 foot makes a yard, and you know, however many, you know, 1,570 yards makes a mile." Like that's obvious. Like, why would 1 to 1 to 1 to 10 times 10 times 10 make any sense at all? And you'll find half of LinkedIn agree with you.
Yes.
Yeah. So like, but anyway, to bring it back to leadership, if we wanted to, because I'm happy to meander. Josh, I think like, first of all, thank you for sharing. Like those are some like deep and, you know, vulnerable statements that you've made, and, you know, really let us get to know you a lot better, which is amazing. But the leadership challenges, if that could come out of that, is like, there's so many, right? Like, is it a leadership's job to accommodate everybody? You know, because like you could make a workplace safe and comfortable for parents with autistic children, and there's a million different needs. Everyone has their own needs, obviously, and I think a lot of people would agree their needs might not be as complicated as yours, right? But everyone has their needs. So like, you know, you get this vapid leadership where it's always just like, help people, always do what they need. And everyone else is sitting there going like, it's not possible. You know, so maybe, and this would come down to like where Mandy gets to experience some leadership, maybe it's often about just helping people find the right path for them and what will work for them and not for everyone else. And sometimes that may even mean not working with us.
Yeah.
You know, like but you have to be empathetic and willing to understand the problems from other people's perspectives to know if you can help or not. And, you know, like, it's amazing that you're able to find a church that gave you what you wanted, right? A lot of people don't like church. Like, I mean, you know, it's not a thing that's in my world. Yeah, we call them shuls, but like, it's everyone's different, and like leaders struggle these days with how to deliver that. Like, how could you as a company literally deliver what all of your employees need when you as an individual are still flawed and still struggling to deliver what you need?
Yeah. Well, and I you know, Ricky, and I think you're right. Regardless if we want to take this from the discussion of like sales or marketing or even childcare, it's about how can we give to the people the best of what they need in order to be successful. And I think we see a lack of that, regardless if it's the government or many businesses. So I think you're absolutely right, because I mean, we could go on a whole discussion about like people with EpiPens in order to survive, and so but anyway, we'll leave that for a discussion of another day.
Yeah, here's two of your conversations for some other SaaSy Saturdays. The role of that we've brought up with, you know, you brought up the role of religion in leadership cultures and values. Pros, cons, how is that like, is that exclusive? Like I've worked at a company where like they had like deeply Christian values, which, I mean, very powerful. What a strong form of leadership. Didn't resonate with me. I'm not Christian, anyway. But and you've brought up what metric versus imperial. That one will, Jesus, that will get you some engagement on LinkedIn, Josh.
Yeah, enough of that one.
You will be the next biggest influencer.
No.
Okay, well, I'm gonna post tomorrow about how it's 12 inches, not a foot. It's BS if you believe differently. Like, yeah, I've got it.
Hey,
I'm gonna kick you, Josh, just for the record.
One real quick thing. So another topic I would love for us to talk about in the future is the span of responsibility versus the span of authority. Because a lot of times I find that managers, leaders are put in a position where they're responsible for a lot of different things, and yet they're not empowered with the authority they need in order to affect the change on those things that they're responsible for.
Okay, hold on, Nick.
I'm just going to give Nick snaps for that because yes, 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 and yes.
Well, I'm writing this down because
let's do this. Let's stay on after the live and let Mandy have the last word for before we drop off the live.
Did you? Okay, so Nick, you said authority versus what now?
Responsibility.
Responsibility. I love it.
Go on, Mandy.
Well, I'm just going to return us to our original topic because we have strayed 50 ways from Sunday. So wrapping up to what we were started with, which was like leadership and also rewards and recognition type of a conversation. So circling back to that, I would say if anybody is still with us in the audience, something that I would say is that if you are currently a leader or you manage a team and you're looking at tips and tricks to get better, I think the easiest takeaway is ask your team what they need from you. Be transparent that you might not know already what they need. Ask them what they need and understand that each team member might give you something different. Because if you ask an extrovert, like, how can I give you rewards and recognition? Public praise is a win, right? Like, I want my leaders to know I'm awesome. I want my whole team to know I'm awesome. Please put me on the leaderboard. Yes. If you're dealing with an introvert that's on your team, they might hate that, like real hate that, and be like, you know what I would love is if you wrote me a personal note. Like, I'm a words of affirmation person. I would love if you just took 10 minutes and wrote me a note that I can keep 10 years from now. That would mean the most to me. So that is my tip and trick for the day. If you're trying to get better with your team, these are easy things that you can do to understand your team better and to show up for them better.
Love it.
Thanks, Mandy.
Amazing.
And with that, we catch you next week on SaaSy Saturdays Live. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.